Thank you for joining me, everyone. I have another experience for us all today. This one is courtesy of a lady called Yvette, and this is Yvette's experience. It was August the 15th, 1987, and I was getting my dance school ready for new classes. I had a fever of 38 to 39 degrees, and because of the aspirin wouldn't help, I had to call for my doctor. After hearing of my symptoms, he diagnosed flu. We weren't worried, and we found it a bit amusing as it wasn't even flu season. We agreed that I would go on antibiotics, convinced that all would be back to normal fairly quickly. Quite the contrary. My aches got worse and my fever went up to 40 degrees. I refused to go to the hospital, and because I live close to my mother, I received medical assistance at my home. I only accepted visits from doctors and from my mother, who were taking care of me. I had told everyone that I might be contagious, but in reality, I just didn't want anybody seeing me like this. Day after day, I saw myself decline physically and morally. My body ruthlessly weakened. My joints ached. Getting up from my bed was difficult. I couldn't stand steadily, and I worried about falling because my legs wouldn't carry me. It hurt to walk. I lost my appetite and had difficulty swallowing all the delicious vegetable soups my mother had prepared. Reading was uncomfortable and the light bothered me. My mind didn't control my body anymore, and I was rebelling. I anxiously waited for medical test results. I felt sorry for myself, and when I was alone, I cried, being aware of any noises coming from the door as my mother sometimes came in inappropriate moments. I didn't answer the phone anymore as the ringer startled me and hurt my ears. I listened to the messages on the answering machine when I was lucid enough to do so. I couldn't sleep soundly, and all the street noises echoed and pounded in my head. My main concern was trying to hide from my family how my disease was worsening. By modesty, but mainly by fear of hospitalization. I used my intelligence to fool them, but now was having difficulty being vigilant at any instant. One morning I threw the box of sleeping pills into the toilet. I had taken half a pill every night for the past 2 weeks, and I thought they were the cause of my nightmares and delirium. I woke in the middle of the night, sweating to the point of taking off my blanket, or being cold to the point of not being able to warm up. Some nights I was hunted by nightmares from my teenage years. I felt relentlessly in a void, my heart pounding, to what seemed an eternity. I woke up, horrified, panting, and clinging to my blanket like a madwoman. One day I had to go to the hospital for some exams, and miraculously my temperature held at 39 degrees, which meant I could be discharged that same night. One night, a few days later, I felt like my pain was subsiding and my fever was going down. It felt better, calmer, and to my amazement, I wasn't hearing sounds from outside anymore. I knew I was going to sleep soundly, and I needed it badly. In this healing silence, I heard 2 manly, low voices with a soft tone. I had never heard them before, and their clarity was bewildering. One was to my left and the other was to my right, and they were just there without any physical manifestation. These pleasant, sweet voices were comforting to my ears. I was attentively listening to their conversation, but quickly got upset. I realized they were calmly deliberating my fate as if I wasn't there. Despite my best efforts, I was unable to make any noise coming out of my mouth. I was mute and could only address them telepathically. I knew they could hear me, but they were not too preoccupied about it and acted as if I wasn't there. I felt powerless, and it was infuriating to me. I understood something abnormal was happening, but it was real, and a serious decision was being made unbeknownst to me. I thought of my daughter who still needed me. I argued, protested, begged, but nothing worked. They were still ignoring me. The voice at my left was on my side, and it was listing my qualities, but the one on the right wasn't in my favour. It was listing my most insignificant imperfections. At the same time, scenes I remembered from my life and other scenes I was in, but were unknown to me, were unfolding at such a fast speed that they were bumping into my head. The whole thing was very confusing, and I found the situation I was in to be insulting and ridiculous. Tired from all the useless efforts I had made to try to be heard and moved from some of the pictures and comments, I fell asleep. All of a sudden, I saw my body below me, inert, laying down on my bed. It felt so good. I went to see my daughter, who was sound asleep at my mother's place. I freely moved into space with a bewildering lightness and speed. No obstacles and barriers were obstructing my movements. I went through walls with childish pleasure. I was having fun and totally taking advantage of it. The Statue of Liberty and the New York skyscrapers did not impress me anymore. I went back to my bedroom to observe my body with as much disregard as before. I found myself appalling, and I smiled from within. Suddenly, I was violently sucked in by an uncontrollable force. It felt like it ripped my heart out and swiftly took me into a dark place. I was in pain and terribly scared. It was some sort of wide open and unstable abyss with glowing walls, and it was terrifyingly dark. The unpleasant smell of sulphur was making me nauseous. Hideous shadows appeared from everywhere and fidgeted in every direction. Their moans were dreadful. They were touching me lightly, trying to catch me, to hold me. I was horrified, and my fear was at its worst. Then a bright and intense constellation enthralled me. I radiated and was attracted to it. Getting to it seemed to take forever, but the closer I got, the more I felt free of my torpor by its purifying brightness. I was exhausted. As if by magic, I entered it, or it absorbed me. I could not tell the difference. That's when all my fears lessened to give way to peace, serenity, and a well-being that I did not know existed. Here, I was serene in a peaceful world, where the light enlightened with all its glory and invigorated intensely, where the perfumes exhaled a captivating fragrance. A world nourished by spectacular symphonies, backed with the melodious sounds of a sacred choir, where everything was pure beauty. Nature was rich, glistening, and luxurious. The green pastures were filled with flowers with fancy petals, subtle shades and delicious smells, so beautiful that our most prized gardens would have been green with envy. Estates of crystals adorned with precious gems shined everywhere. Sky blue lakes had a silvery reflection. Forest offered a myriad of elegant trees. Their leaves were sumptuous and were of many shades of fluorescent green. Beings of an exceptional glory expressed the power of everlasting love in all its pure truth. I had never seen anything so extraordinarily harmonious, never had been through such a comprehensive and intelligent sensory experience. I never felt so free to express myself, never felt such an intense flood of love. I am captivated and paralyzed by the presence of a group. A very large being of extreme beauty illuminated everything. He exuded divine superiority with his presence. He was barefoot, and he stepped away from the group to face me with all his magnificence. He was wearing a long, immaculate white robe. His arms hung alongside his body with his palms open. My attention was on his long and stringy fingers and his fine, superb hands. He was observing me with a look of infinite goodness and compassion that reached deep inside my being. Jesus Christ appeared to me, wrapped me up with his divine presence. His radiance embraced my soul. I could feel him with every fibre of my body. The power of his love wrapped itself around me in a surreal silence. I did not want to leave him. An untimely noise forced me to open my eyes. Stunned, I found myself in a bed and noticed my mother, who was in the doorway. I didn't move. She thought I was asleep, and I was sad. A few tears softly rolled down my cheeks. I could hear my mother busying herself in the kitchen. I got up in a hurry to tell her I had died, but that death was a wonderful state. It is only a liberation of our bodies that fills our souls with love. Surprised to see me up, she inquired about my health, even before I could tell her about the unbelievable adventure I'd just experienced. Nothing mattered more than sharing with her the truth that had just been revealed to me. There was a lightness about me that made me think I was doing better. Then I realized I am healed. My mum listened to my story skeptically and didn't interrupt to suggest that my fever must have created a delirium that brought on an enchanted dream. In the afternoon, I asked my mum to drive my daughter, my poodle Blondie, and myself to the mountain. I had this odd need to be with nature, to reconnect with the trees as if they were vital for my complete remission. My mum found my request to be unusual, but happily came along for the pleasant drive. My daughter and I were on a communicative lockout. We hugged each other and laughed for no reason. My mother and I were on a communicative lookout. We hugged each other and laughed for no reason. My mum worried about me getting tired, but she was happy for us. Blondie was wild and ran in all directions without going too far. The air was filled with the echo of our laughter, and life on earth regained its rights. 3 days later, at the beginning of this beautiful month of October 1987, I was once again teaching gymnastic and dance lessons with as much pleasure as before, but with a renewed energy. All the medical exams came back negative. The disease carefully kept its secret. And that's the end of Yvette's experience. So this is one of those ones that actually, as I was reading it, reminded me of one of the more well-known experience, a guy called Howard Storm. He kind of went to a hellish type environment after falling ill overseas and having to go to hospital, and he had some much more extremely dark experience than Yvette has, and ends up finding the light and being rescued in a similar sort of way to what's happened in this experience. So yeah, I would definitely recommend you finding Howard Storm on YouTube or somewhere and having a listen to an interview with him, and or even finding his book, because yeah, it's well worth a listen. And I think he's a pastor or something now, or minister or something. But yeah, it's amazing how these near-death experiences can transform people and push them in directions that they never thought they would go in. And I haven't had one myself, but I have had some spiritually transformative experiences that have pushed me onto a path that, yeah, I really didn't believe a few years ago. And now here I am researching as much about God as I get time to. It's interesting how life works out, and yeah, we just never know what path we're on. It goes on. We're always sort of changing our journey's direction and going down roads that we didn't anticipate, because life is always throwing up challenges and curveballs that push us in ways that sometimes we don't want to, but sometimes they turn out to be experiences that help us grow and become better people. And this is a big reason why I don't think darkness, like we see in this experience here, is such a bad thing, because it pushes us to embrace the light, and it gives us that perspective between good and bad, and shows us how we should, how living a life is less challenging when you avoid that darkness that you've been exposed to. You just think of the darkness as a bit of a teacher, and it can push you away from it. And so rather than looking at negativity and experiences in this world that are hard to navigate as things to hate and despise, maybe we should be, potentially looking at it in another way, and looking at it as something that pushes us towards becoming more evolved and better people. And sometimes that's difficult to do, like especially when you are in a bit of a trough and you are finding life difficult to get through. Look, I get it. When you are in that spot, it's not easy to want to look at that darkness and say, wow, you're fantastic. I'm grateful for these difficult feelings I'm going through right now. But yeah, it sometimes takes perspective to see it that way. And like when I'm reading these podcasts, I'm in a pretty good space, so I can kind of look at darkness from that perspective. But yeah, I'm like everyone else. When you are in the middle of one of those parts of life that is absolutely despicable, then yeah, it's hard to see the positivity in it. But anyway, let's go through Yvette's experience again. So Yvette, this is happening back in 1987. It looks like she is getting ready for a dance class, and she's the teacher. She has a bit of a fever, and the doctor says, yeah, look, after she goes to the doctor, he says, look, you probably got some flu, and they think that's a little bit strange because it's not the middle of winter, and flu isn't that common in summer. So they decide that they should go on antibiotics, and for her this is ineffective. The fever actually goes up a little bit higher. So she doesn't want to go to hospital, and she thinks, well, I'm living close to my mum, so I might just stay at home, get my mum to drop in and help me out when I need it, get her to take my daughter and just help me get better. And hospital, I can relate to that. Hospital is a little bit scary and unappealing. Now that I work in one, I can see most definitely why people avoid them at all costs. So, but this is not really working for her. She is not getting any better. Her physical health is getting worse and worse. It's gone way past the usual flu period, and she is having trouble walking. She's got achy joints. Can't really stand properly. No appetite, and it's just deteriorating into a situation which is getting more and more serious. So she gets some blood tests, and she's awaiting those, and in the meantime she's stressed out, she's anxious. There's starting to be a little bit of delirium creeping in here. She's avoiding the phone. It's just her mental state is getting to a point where she is not really cognitive of what is going on in this reality. It's sort of blurring between coming in and out of consciousness a bit. And she's hiding all this from her family, like she's not letting them know how serious her condition is. She says she's using her intelligence to trick them into thinking she isn't as bad as she really is. And she's doing this to, I guess, avoid going to hospital and to alleviate any worry they might have. So and then obviously, as we usually read in these experiences, it gets to the point where she totally drops out of this physical realm and crosses over to another dimension. So in her case, it isn't quite as drastic or dramatic or clear cut as being in one dimension and going to the next. And I think most of us have kind of experienced this a bit when we get a fever or some condition like a serious flu. You can get a little bit delirious, and it gets to that point where you almost get lost in another world inside your head, and this seems to be the first stage of her near-death experience. I remember when I first got COVID, it was a little bit like that. I was I wasn't fully in this realm anymore. Like I knew I was, but at the same time, I was just having these crazy dream-like experiences that were, quite interesting. Actually, though I was actually quite enjoying them. I can't remember what actually happened, but I remember just being quite content to be in this delirious state. And like I said, there was nothing that really stood out to me as an event that occurred, just more like a feeling of enjoying the experience I was having. So for her, this delirious stage, she says she can hear voices, and I've never had delirium like this before. So in her state, she's hearing these two people, one on her left, one on her right, and they're actually discussing what qualities she has, and they're trying to argue almost over what fate she should go through, like what's going to happen. They're almost arguing, should she live or should she die? One of the voices is on her side and listing all the positive qualities, and the other voice is reeling off all these insignificant imperfections, and I guess kind of arguing the case that maybe she should just die. And it also looks like there's a bit of a life review going on at this stage as well. There's scenes from her life, and they're just flashing before her eyes almost. And for her, she's not feeling well. Like, she's in this other realm, and she's not enjoying this experience. It's like there's too many things going on at once. There's people arguing over her fate. There's this life review happening, and she's not in that full spiritual soul place yet, because she's obviously still feeling unwell and connected to her physical body, and she's just tired of this place where she's at, as she can't make any sense of it. And at that point, she just sort of drops back out and goes back to sleep, or back into her body, or passes out, or I don't know, disconnects from this delirium somehow. But as she does that, this is when the so-called real leaving the body happens, or the near-death experience begins. She's able to detach herself from the body completely and start flying around. She's amazed at how quickly she can move, and how there's no such thing as a physical barrier or obstacle. She's able to move through walls. She's able to fly around the city. She goes and sees the New York City skyscrapers, and she says she's not that impressed by it anymore. Then she goes back to have a look at her body, and she says she finds herself appalling, and smiles from within. So there's a bit of a dark side to this experience, and I don't think I've ever actually come across an experience where someone goes and sees their body. Usually it's like, what's that? Who's that? I don't recognize that person, until the penny drops and they suddenly realize, oh yeah, that's me. But for Yvette, she is now in spirit or soul state, and she's flying around, and she goes back to check her body out, and she finds herself appalling, and then has a little smile about this experience within. So this is one of these experiences where the body has left, the soul has left the body, and they're still in this physical realm. At this point, there's no connection to this other dimension apart from the state of the being the person themselves is in. They're still in this physical world. They can still go and, see things that is happening on this planet, and but do it without a physical body. And then this is when it changes, though, because suddenly she feels sucked in by this uncontrollable force. It's like it rips her heart out and swiftly takes her into a dark place. She is in pain, she's scared, and this experience has all these hellish light images that we are so often taught or read about. Like, there's this horrible smell of sulfur. It's making her sick. She can see these hideous, shadowy figures everywhere. They're making these horrible sounds. They're touching her. They're trying to catch her. It's a real hellish landscape. And obviously, when you're in that sort of situation, the fear. It becomes intense and almost uncontrollable, and this is, when I come across experiences like this, I just think, why are there these places in the universe where you go into such darkness? We all know what darkness is like as earthlings, but sometimes that gets even taken to a more extreme level in this other dimension, and it is even more terrifying. And this is pretty much a definition of what hell sounds like to me, especially, going back to what I learnt as a kid and all the horrific images that I was taught could happen to you as if you ended up in hell. They're pretty much aligned with what I'm reading here, minus the eternal fire and fear of being there for eternity. But yeah, Yvette is in this dark place, and she doesn't really offer any glimpse into why she thinks she ended up there. It's just an explanation of what it was like. To get out of these hellish light realms, I often read in these experiences, all you have to do is ask for God, ask for the light, ask for some guidance, and generally that's when help comes. But for Yvette, there's no mention of this. It's just like she explains this situation of being in hell, and then she says, in her words, as if by magic, I suddenly felt absorbed and connected to this light, and with that connection, all the fear gives way to peace, serenity, and well-being. So in her case, she doesn't have to ask, she doesn't have to pray or any of those things. It just comes to rescue her, and then we get this description of what her heaven-like realm looked like. So for her, there was this peaceful world where the light. I really like the way she wrote this heaven-like realm and described it. So there's perfumes, there's intensity in the colours, there's this music that is just absolute bliss, sung by sacred choirs, and she also gets a natural landscape that's rich and luxurious and glistening with green pastures and flowers, and she says it just makes our gardens on earth look, second rate compared to what she's experiencing here. And the skies even had this silvery reflection to them. There's forests with all the different types of trees. There's just an exceptional glory to what she is experiencing. And she says that she's never seen anything so harmonious and never experienced anything like this scene she is living in now. She says there's like a bit of a intelligence to what she feels that she's seeing, and with that is this intense flood of love. Now, this part of the experience is also, it's got a lot of imagery that we see on planet Earth. There's trees, flowers, hills, skies, and sometimes people have these sort of images when they do experience this other realm. Sometimes there is no earth-like imagery at all. It just is, boom, you're in this dimension, and then boom, you're in the next, and almost like anything to do with earth, the feelings, the emotions, the experience of being a human on a physical realm is totally left behind. But quite often, if you're a regular listener, you will hear experiences where people are experiencing a heaven-like place where there is a lot of earth-like analogies and symbolism and a continuation almost of what we experienced on earth, just without the negativity associated with it, or the darkness or the challenges. It's like you are suddenly free of all that, and you are in this realm that you are familiar with, you're comfortable with. It's what you know. Just you don't have your body anymore, and you are you're just in a very blissful state. Then she comes across this being, she says, is of extreme beauty, and this being just radiates light everywhere. It has this divine superiority to his presence. And then she goes into a little bit of detail of what this presence actually looked like. He's barefoot, he's got a white robe, she's just totally absorbed by this figure and very much drawn to him. And she says that he's looking at her with this look of infinite goodness and compassion that reaches and touches her deeply. And she says she thinks this figure is Jesus. And Jesus then wraps her up in this divine presence, and his radiance just embraces her soul, and she can feel, every fiber of her body just vibrating higher and in a much higher state. And she just feels content, happy, surreal, and just doesn't want to leave this situation. So this experience, it progresses from, kind of delirium type state, which most of us would be able to relate to. And if the experience stopped there, I could, there are a few elements of what you see in a normal NDE, like other beings and a life review, but it's kind of bordering on, is this a dream? Is this someone's imagination? But then it progresses to this heaven-like state. And then for me, when you start getting these highly evolved beings like Jesus start to connect with the person having the experience, that's when it sort of becomes official or more believable NDE for me. And so this is what part of the experience she's up to, and this is when the experience ends. So she is 1 minute in the hands of Jesus Christ, and then the next she is waking up in her body, crying, wanting to be back where she was, but also feeling a little bit better from the experience she's just had. She's quite in awe of what's just happened and wants to share with her mother exactly what she experienced when she died. So she says that her mum is surprised to see her up, and she begins to share what happened to her. And as is so often the case, especially back in 1987, people were probably even more skeptical than they are now, and she tells her mum anyway, and her mum is having trouble believing that this is what has happened, and chalks it down to potentially her delirium and her mental state. The next day, she feels much better. It's like her illness is in remission. She never really finds out what was wrong with her, but she decides she feels very drawn to go into nature, and her dog, her kid, her mum go for a drive up to the country, into the mountains, and then she has a great day there and goes back to work with a more invigorated perspective and a willingness to take life on again. So yeah, that's the end of Yvette's experience. So yeah, I'll wrap it up there. That's all I've got time for. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Can you please, if you feel so inclined and you want to reach out and say hi, my email is podafterlife@gmail.com. I love to hear from you, so yeah, don't be shy. But yeah, wishing you a fantastic week and lots of love and peace and satisfaction with your life as a human. So yeah, talk to you then. Goodbye.